Welcome to the Startup of the Year podcast, where each episode we showcase exciting new companies from around the world. This podcast is produced by Established, creators of the Startup of the Year program. Established is focused on helping organizations with their innovation, startup, and communication strategies.
Hello, everybody. It's Frank Gruber, and we're back with the Startup of the Year podcast. On this episode, we'll be hearing interviews from a couple of different startups that were part of our Startup of the Year program. Both did very well at our Startup of the Year Summit in 2019. We've got Immertec, which is based out of Tampa Bay. They were our runner-up in the Startup of the Year Summit down in Memphis. And then we've got SecondKeys, which is based actually in Memphis, and they got third place this past year. And we got both of them on the podcast today. So super exciting to hear from some founders sharing their stories. And we actually brought along a couple of extra folks that actually referred them to us to be a part of our program. So we'll be hearing from a lot of different voices today as they share their stories and a little bit more about what they're up to. Before we get started, though, let's hear from Rich Maltais from our team, the Established team. He's got something to say about Silicon Valley Bank, who is a partner of ours, a sponsor of the podcast. So, Rich, let's hear a little bit about Silicon Valley Bank.
Absolutely. So today's episode of the Startup of the Year podcast is brought to you by Silicon Valley Bank. And the team at Established, we've been building startup communities for 13 years. And Silicon Valley Bank consistently shows up, adds value, supports startups, and supports their clients. They're more than just bankers. They're mentors, they're advisors, they're super connectors. And we love having the SVB team at our events because they bring a depth of knowledge about startup markets that just doesn't exist from most service providers. And they always treat their founders with respect. And so if you're not banking with Silicon Valley, if you're using, say, a traditional retail bank like the one on the corner, there's nothing wrong with those banks. But if you're using that, a traditional retail bank, and you plan to raise venture capital, you need to bank with SVB. Your retail banker might not even know what the heck venture capital is, but SVB team does this day in and day out. This is their specialty. They've been through the fundraising process with thousands of startups, and they have additional resources to see you through the process and help you succeed. We love SVB, and we're grateful that they're supporting the Startup of the Year podcast. And so visit svb.com/next. to learn more. That's svb.com/next. So Silicon Valley Bank, ideas bank here.
Thanks so much, Rich. And thank you, SVB. We appreciate your support in the podcast. Now we're going to dive into our first interview, Immertec, which is a startup out of Tampa Bay who's taking a new approach to surgical training that transports surgeons into the surgical site for real-time training in a virtual reality environment. We're going to hear from the co-founder and CEO of Immertec, Erik Maltais, as well as the Cohort Director at Tampa Bay Wave, Richard Munassi, who referred us to Immertec. So let's listen in.
And we are a software company, a communications platform where we focus in medical device training. So we allow medical device companies to decrease their sales cycle and essentially increase sales and decrease their expenses at the same time by making life easier for their busy physician customers. Instead of asking them to give up 2 days of potential earnings, family time, and private practice, they can ask them to consider receiving a VR headset in the mail and to put it on at the time of the surgery and remote into an operating room, observe the surgery as if they were present, ask questions, listen to commentary all in real time.
How did you get the name Immertec? And actually, that dives right into the question of like some examples of you talked on stage in Memphis about some examples of this in being used real time. First off, Immertec, that's kind of an obscure name. Wanted to understand where that came from and the why behind it.
Okay, yeah. So the name is built around, so our company is immersive tech. So it's really the combination of those two words, immersion and technology together. Yep. And it's a lot of people, when they think about virtual reality, they think about the aspect of being in 3D, which is really important aspect of it, or in 2D. But it's really the key part is immersion, because when you immerse yourself into something, into another environment, it allows you to choose what you see and to be present, which is very difficult. And many times, how many times have you been on your cell phone and you're looking at one thing and then someone comes in and all of a sudden you're not focused on that person, now you're focused on your phone. But when you're in virtual reality, you're kind of forced to be present. So that's a really key aspect in our technology, and I think in this whole space, it's one of the best things that comes from virtual reality. And so we named our company after that aspect.
That makes sense. All right. And so really being immersed into a situation is kind of what it's all about, sounds like. So give us an example of where the technology has been used to kind of help. In one case, I think you mentioned it helped somebody save a life. It's a pretty good example that you shared. So maybe you want to share a little bit more about that with our listeners.
Yeah. So in privacy, and during my presentation, I told this story and I used some names. I'm not going to do that in this case. So, but I will share the story because I think it's really compelling. It's just for the privacy of the other people. I'll keep it de-identified. So recently there was a surgery that was happening in Texas, and it was a cochlear implant that it was done by one physician who began to have complications in the operating room. I'd never seen this, and he called me over, and I'm thinking, you're calling the wrong person. I'm not a physician. Why is he calling me? And the reason why he called me is because he said, hey, could you get another doctor that I had previously flown out and given a VR headset to hold on to, because he's well respected in the community and can seen as a key opinion leader, so that in this space. And I said, well, I could give him a call, but I don't know if he's going to be available or whether I'll be able to do it, but I'll go for it. So I gave him a call and I said, sir, we have a doctor that wants you to come in and see something do you have the VR headset on you? And he says, I have the VR headset on me. However, I'm going to be away for the next 4 hours with my wife in the car for 45 minutes, and I won't be able to do it until I get to back to the university in order to log on. I said, well, sir, are you driving, or are you in the passenger seat? And he tells me that he tells me he's in the passenger seat. I say, great. Could you grab your headset? And then I walked him through the processes of connecting the VR headset to his phone through the Wi-Fi. And then from that moment, he was able to, while driving through busy traffic in one of the biggest cities in this country, he was able to remote into an operating room to observe this training and actually give real-time feedback and save this person's life. And that was could have been potentially fatal for them because of the type of surgery that they were having. And that was an extraordinary moment for us, especially as a startup where, we've been in clinical use for less than a year, and to see that, there's no doubt in our mind that we were able to help save someone's life. It's not that wasn't necessarily our business model, but it was the way that physician at that moment, while he was training someone, he felt that was the most effective. That was the best way to solve that problem, right? Was to immediately get access to a key opinion leader, right?
Pretty powerful stuff. Yes. Are there any other companies doing this, or if so, what makes your company different?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's definitely companies that are in virtual reality going after the healthcare space. There's only one of them that's going directly after medical device training. But there's one thing that is a huge differentiator between what we do and what all these companies have in common is that virtual reality was built for video games originally, and so. It's created on the concept of simulations, right? So you create a simulation that someone can train in after it's built over a year with a bunch of engineers, kind of like a video game or like a movie, right? The problem with video games and movies is that, for a good video game to happen, it takes a huge budget and years to produce, right? We saw that early on when we started to investigate to see what type of things that other companies were building. And then the same thing with the movie. You have to have a storyboard and a planning and a scripting, and then you go out and you do production, and then there's post-production, and then editing, and et cetera. And it takes a little bit less than what it takes to make a video game, but it's still what we felt unacceptable. And then when we started to research, well, what does the research say about learning? And we saw that the golden standard for physician training was mentorship from an expert to an apprentice. And that was simply because of there's a lot of risk involved in learning a new procedure or adopting a new device. So that really resonated with me, myself, being a veteran. I was in the Marine Corps for 5 years, and I trained constantly, repetitively, simulating as much stress as possible so that while 37 minutes in Iraq that I was going to perform under that pressure, right? Because my whole entire tenure in the Marine Corps was measured in 37 minutes, right?
Wow.
And so similar to a Marine in combat, right? Physicians are measured in when someone's life's in their hands, right? And so they want to simulate that experience of being in an operating room, performing a surgery, and ask questions, like specific questions that they have that may be different than what someone else has before they're going to adopt a device or a procedure. So we spent 5 years building out all the intellectual property that it would take in order to make it so that there was no post-production, there was no production at all, that it was a simple product where in an operating room, you lift a camera to eyeball level, set it and forget it, and then from there, the physician presses one button on a pad and they're able to create a stream, and which allows a physician who in advance schedules a training at their convenience to get a notification on their cell phone that says, hey, the surgeon just went into the operating room, in 10 minutes your surgery will start. They get a 4-digit HIPAA compliant code to use when donning their headset. From that moment, they're as if they were there, but they didn't have to give up 2 days of family time or potential earnings or private practice. They were able to be present, simulate the experience in real time.
Great. No, that makes sense. So I think just a few more questions here, and then we're going to kick over to one of your somebody you work closely with. So tell us a little bit more about where you see this company going in the next 5 years. I know you're at the cutting edge right now of this immersive technology. Where do you see it wanting to go? And maybe a quick one on that, and then kind of jump into your thoughts on Memphis in general and what just happened with our summit.
Awesome. So where I see us going right now, we're hyper focused on kind of building out the foundation. We just closed our Series A. Really exciting, bringing in the right people, solidifying our culture. And then we are now hyper focused on publishing, because you could build a technology that's going to help people, but if you're not measuring this success in statistically significant ways, then you're not really adding to the conversation and changing anything. And so that's our main focus. And then we're very strategic and only looking to take on specific customers in solving this problem. We feel that it's a long play in this space. So it's like publishing around the efficacy and then partnering with the right people who care about changing the way that physicians and helping physicians that are suffering from physician fatigue and other problems that are just plaguing this. Healthcare is a problem globally. 5 billion people on the planet don't have access to safe and affordable surgery. 60% of Americans don't have access to trauma level 1 and 2. And that's not a problem that's going to get solved in 1 or 2 years. And so you're kind of playing that. And then the second part of that is that we're building out a physician advisory board with physicians from 10 of the top 30 research institutions in the world, with basically with the intentions of allowing them to remote their access to people anywhere in this country, regionally, and eventually the world.
Wow, the future of medical technology and surgery really is remote and immersive. Pretty amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, and great job with the start of the year and everything you're doing. How much did you raise? Just real quick. You just raised
$6 million.
$6 million. Great. Congratulations. That's awesome. Sounds like you're off to the races. I wanted to bring on so the person that's responsible for referring you to our Startup of the Year program, Richard Munassi. He's actually also the Cohort Director at Tampa Bay Wave in Tampa Bay, Florida. Richard, you there?
I sure am. Thanks so much, Frank, for having me. It's great to catch up and sit down outside of the hustle and bustle of Memphis and the crowds and the crying babies in the crowd.
Yeah, totally. So thanks for joining us, and thanks for referring Immertec. You tell us a little bit more about how you heard about the company, how you started working with the company, and kind of what you've seen in it as you've watched it grow.
Sure, I'd be more than happy to. So I actually met Erik through a mutual contact here in the Tampa area, and we sat down, and what was supposed to just be a 30-minute meeting ended up going about 2 hours. I really dug in with him. My background, I'm an MD, MBA physician. I've been in the tech space for about 10 years, primarily out of Los Angeles and Houston. Moved here to Tampa just a few years ago. I love the city, decided I wanted to kind of settle here for a few years. Got involved with the local tech community, including the Tampa Bay Wave, where I'm a director. And through that, I met Erik, and we sat down for about 2 hours. I dug in on the technology. I had been looking for simulation training options for some of the local community healthcare organizations and universities. So the timing was absolutely perfect. And once Erik kind of told me about their vision for the company, what they really thought I could do, I really wanted to learn as much as I could. And within 2 hours, I got to say, he's a great salesman. He sold me on the idea. I kind of pushed him to apply and told him that, if you want to get involved in the community, we'd love to help you out from a Wave perspective. He applied. He presented to our selection committee, and
2 days later.
Yeah, 2 days later, presented to our selection committee 2 days later, and it was off to the races from there.
Great. And so now that they're part of the Wave, tell us a little bit more about how you guys are engaging with them and kind of what that looks like.
Sure. So with all of our Wave companies, what we really try to do is we try to provide as much value as possible in multiple ways, whether that's introductions to investors, to everything from HR companies to accounting firms to law firms. Our mentor network is very robust. For the companies that come through our cohorts, which we do 2 to 3 a year, and we typically do 8 to 12 companies per cohort, the companies that get in get a significant amount of value. And one of the great things about Wave is that we do not take any equity in the startups that come through our program. We're founded by founders. So we are a nonprofit that is fully funded by local government, by federal government, by large corporates, and then by our investor network. So it's a big value add that we tried to provide. And then during the course of the cohort, I'll sit down with each company one-on-one. We'll kind of have a game plan on how we want to tackle the 100-day cohort. And then we get them in front of every stakeholder that we can, everyone that we spoke about earlier, outside people, including customers. And our goal is to shore up the company's internal issues while introducing them to the community and allowing them to have a soft landing spot to engage the Tampa region and open up business.
That sounds awesome. So next steps then, what do you see as far as the next steps for milestones for Immertec as they continue to move forward?
I would not be surprised if we saw Immertec published in multiple well-regarded peer-reviewed journals over the next 12 to 18 months, land multiple SBIRs with the federal government and also potentially with the Department of Defense. I think that they're going to further grow their business within the medical device sector. I think that the medical device sector as a whole is ready for this technology. Physicians are ready for this technology, and it's kind of a win-win. So from a timing perspective, I always say the most critical aspect for the success of any startup is timing more than anything. If it's the right time, people will allow you to fumble your way through a solution. They'll give you the investment that you need. If the market demands it, people will find a way to get it done. Those issues were not apparent with Immertec. They were ready to rock and roll from day one. And I think that we're going to see a huge growth here from them very, very rapidly. And honestly, if I have to be completely candid, I would not be surprised if we saw a sizable exit from them before their next major raise.
There you go. You heard it here first. That's why we brought you guys on. So thanks so much, Richard. And thanks so much, Erik. I really appreciate you guys taking the time. Sounds like the future is bright in this particular sector in Tampa. It's a sunny place too. And thank you guys for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having. This is really awesome. And thank you for the nice words, Dr. Manasi. Definitely, you've been a big help in getting to this point, and the Wave as well.
Much appreciated. Thanks, Erik. And thanks, Frank and the team for your time. And we're always looking for great startups out there, and we're ready to help out any that would like to reach out to Wave, and anybody from Established as well. I mean, you guys have been so great. Any startups that are listening that have not gone to Startup of the Year and applied, or that are thinking about it, please do it. I haven't seen any other conference, and I'm at conferences throughout the year, where there's investors, community leaders, they're just everybody there. All the stakeholders really care about the startups and really want to give back. So next year, hopefully we'll see you guys in Tampa. I don't know if it's been decided yet, but we'd love to have you over here, and any startup, we'd love to see you there as well.
Yeah, and I'll say that. I know that you were closing on it, but I will say that to anybody who's considering whether in startup, especially early stage, it's your success comes from saying no to things and not saying yes to things, or at least saying a lot more no's. And this is something we said yes to that was a better experience, and not even about getting second place. That's great, but it's not about the accolade. Our organization got so many contacts from people that we met there, and just the energy of it, and it was just enjoyable event in general, but just huge contacts, which I think is going to make great inroads for us. We found physician advisors that were there that were speaking with us, press opportunities, as well as connections to the VA, many things. So it behooves of anyone who's doing a startup to compete or to participate.
Thank you, guys. Okay, I guess I'll just hang up. You guys are doing great. Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it, and that's exactly what we're trying to do with our summit. And it sounds like it's working. So I appreciate the feedback, as we don't always hear all the feedback. So thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate your time, and look forward to watching you guys continue to move forward. Thanks so much, Erik and Richard. Really great stuff. Thanks for joining the podcast. Next, we're going to dive into SecondKeys, and we're going to interview the founders of SecondKeys. They were the third place finisher this past year at our summit. The company helps streamline property management operations to retain residents, all while providing cash flow with the essential features needed to manage, organize, and track property management operations. We're going to hear from their co-founders. We've got Amber Hayes and Mars McLean, who are the co-founders of SecondKeys, as well as Katie Milligan, who's from StartCo, who was a partner in the Startup of the Year Summit down in Memphis, who referred the company to us. So let's listen in.
So SecondKeys is a property management software that simplifies the process of filing maintenance requests for rental properties and HOAs. We have three main components, end-to-end ticket tracking, predictive analytics, and a contractor bidding network.
Great. And you two founded the company together, is that right?
Yes, we did. Just a little over 18 months ago.
And how did you two meet?
I was actually his TA for Java class, and I gave him the idea, and at first he didn't really care for it. He said it needed a lot of work, but I was a bit persistent, and we made it through. Okay,
so tell us a little bit more about the business and how it's been growing.
Yeah.
Going.
So essentially, SecondKeys' whole our whole stake is that we want to help the residential property industry live better, manage better, and work better. And we do that through the three components that Amber mentioned earlier, all to allow for the personas of a property, which include the renter, the property owner, and contractors, all to come to one place to get everything that they need. Showing stats such as 30% increase in ticket closure rates, or a 23% increase in savings when it comes to repair versus replace. We're about a year and a half old company, so about 18 months old company, and we have about 1,400 units on the platform right now throughout 4 states. And we started here with the StartCo team.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And so tell me a little bit more about, are there other things like this in the market? I mean, it doesn't sound like anything I've ever heard about. So can you share what your competitive landscape looks like?
There's actually a lot of different products like us in the market. However, it's very fragmented, and all of our competitors have really been out since late 90s, early 2000s. It's rather stagnant as well.
Yeah. What really makes us different from everybody else is that we're a modular system. We hyper-focus on maintenance. We don't do everything in property management. We just do maintenance very well. And the second thing is our data component. We use data to help predict a lot of the issues when it comes to these properties, which is hard to find in any other platform in the marketplace today.
Interesting. Okay, so that sounds like you've found a competitive advantage in a niche to kind of attack and go after. So I'm glad to hear that with such a busy space, it sounds like. So tell us a little bit more about your current status as far as you work with StartCo, but how's your funding looking, and what is that long-term and short-term goals landscape look like?
So we started off raising $300,000. We actually raised $260 already. So we're just looking for 40.
Oh, wow.
For anyone else that wants to put in more, we're opening up for 100. Long-term goals.
Yeah, just short-term and long-term. Where do you see this company going, like maybe in 5 years?
That's a fun one.
Mm-hmm.
SecondKeys, we want SecondKeys to kind of take on the same perspective as, I guess, what you would see with Salesforce or Slack or Microsoft.